Italy has seen what could be the biggest single-day jump in the number of deaths, with at least 133 deaths reported overnight. Now, this brings the country's death toll from the coronavirus to a whopping 366, which is the highest outside mainland China. The total number of infections has now leapt to 7,375. Now, this means that Italy has the second largest number of infections in the entire world after China. The jump in numbers come as Italy takes radical measures to contain this outbreak. More than 16 million people are placed under lockdown as per Italy's plan. The entire province of Lombardy, including the financial capital of Milan, is under a lockdown. Some parts of the Veneto province, including tourist hotspots like Venice, is also under similar quarantine measures. The same restrictions apply to 14 other provinces. Many experts say Italy had no choice but to opt for stringent measures. In a press briefing, the Italian National Institute chief said that no part of Italy is completely immune to the virus.
Credo che un grande appello che mi sento di fare a tutti non è che c'è una parte d'Italia oggi che è completamente immune. Ci sono delle parti d'Italia dove il virus circola di meno allo stato attuale. Ma il fatto che il virus circoli dipende dai nostri comportamenti.
Among the latest people to test positive in Italy is the Army's Chief of Staff, Salvatore Farina. Piedmont Regional Governor Alberto Cirio also tested positive. More importantly, Cirio was present at a crisis meeting about coronavirus in the Prime Minister's office in Rome last week. The Italian government is trying hard to prevent the outbreak from spreading to the country's south, which is medically less advanced. There are reports that the government is planning to recall doctors from retirement to battle this outbreak. Now, Italy will also import around 22 million surgical masks to increase distribution. Now, this lockdown could have a huge impact on Italy's struggling economy. Lombardy is Italy's most prosperous province, and Milan is home to the country's stock exchange. It is yet unclear whether the exchange will remain open at this point. Venice, which attracts thousands of tourists every year, will be dealt a crippling blow by the month-long lockdown, which could very well be extended. Meanwhile, prison inmates across Italy rioted after family visits were suspended due to fears over coronavirus. The riots have now left one prisoner dead and others injured. In the northern city of Modena, inmates took over large parts of prison and smoke rose from the buildings. Neighbouring France also saw a spike in COVID-19 numbers. 19 people in France have succumbed to the infection and more than 1,126 cases have been reported. The latest deaths have been reported in the eastern parts of France. The coronavirus epidemic is currently at stage 2 of a health epidemic in France. 3 is the maximum epidemic stage. Now, France has now banned gatherings of more than 1,000 people in an effort to contain the spread of this virus.
Je vous le rappelle, nous sommes toujours ce soir au stade 2. Cela veut dire que notre priorité est de tout faire pour ralentir la circulation du virus sur le territoire national. C'est la seule façon de protéger les personnes vulnérables et d'atténuer le pic épidémique. À l'échelle nationale, tous les rassemblements de plus de 1000 personnes sont désormais interdits. Les préfets, les ministères feront remonter une liste d'événements considérés comme utiles à la vie de la nation. Je précise que les manifestations en feront partie, tout comme les concours par exemple, ou encore le recours au transport en commun, qui sont des activités utiles à l'activité de la nation.
WION correspondent Holly Hudson is live with us from London. Holly, welcome to WION. We'll discuss Italy in a bit. We were just talking about how Italy has placed 16 million people in lockdown. But first, you are in London. Tell us quickly about the battle against coronavirus in Britain. We were learning that British Prime Minister was also going to hold an emergency meeting. Any updates on that front?
Yes, that's correct. So Britain is bracing for the full force of coronavirus. At the moment, it has resisted such draconian measures as we've seen in Italy and, of course, in France, that has now moved to ban gatherings over 1,000 people. However, Boris Johnson is meeting with his top health officials, with Whitehall officials, as we speak, to decide whether to ramp up Britain's response. He published the UK's action plan against coronavirus last week. The worst-case scenario involved in that, we know, was the deployment of the army, closing down schools, and the government haven't yet ruled out a full-scale lockdown or shutdown, as we have seen in Italy. As yet, they are sort of trying to delay the virus. We know they have a 4-point action plan: contain, delay, research and mitigate. We heard from the UK's chief medical officer that they have now essentially moved into that delay phase. They want to try and sort of prevent the spread from hitting, the peak of the spread from hitting, until the National Health Service here is better equipped to deal with it in the summer months, rather than, of course, the winter when it is overrun with other cases of flu, for example. However, with cases continuing to rise, that response may well need to be ramped up. We saw cases rise here to over 300 yesterday, and so as these cases continue to rise here in Britain, questions sort of remain over how to draw that balance. It's a very fine line between sort of stopping disruption and panic and not acting quick enough, and that is something that governments around Europe, around the world, are grappling with, really trying to strike that balance between the sacrificing the economy in the short term and avoiding disruption, but also, of course, trying to save the country from being ravaged by the coronavirus. That is the decision that Italy and Giuseppe Conte, the Prime Minister there, has now taken. He says that the sacrifices in Italy will be for the good of all. So we may well see other European countries, when they feel the full effects of the coronavirus, as Italy has, if and when they do, they may well move to initiate full-scale lockdowns like there have been there.
Right. But, there is a sense that Italy has lost track of their plans to contain the spread of this virus. 16 million people are under lockdown in Italy. Now, that's the same blueprint that China followed in China's efforts to contain the spread of the virus. But in Italy, close to 350 people dead, over 7,000 infected. What's the sense, or what are you hearing from the European Union as far as Italy's efforts or lack of efforts to contain the spread of the virus?
Well, the EU are very limited in what they can do sort of beyond. It's up to member states, really, to impose restrictions, because it's up to them, their health policies, their economic policies. However, there have been calls for a more coordinated, universal response from the European Union, not just in terms of support, but financial support, fiscal measures as well. France have called on the EU for fiscal support today. Italy has also said that it will pump money into its economy to try and mitigate the effect. Of course, I heard you mention previously that these lockdown measures are centred on the country's economic powerhouse, really. Milan, Venice, all very industrial areas that are very rich and productive for the country. So it will no doubt have a very big economic impact in Italy, and they're very aware of that. The World Health Organization have praised Italy for the sacrifices that they have made in that respect. But the question is whether it is too late, whether the horse has already bolted in many ways. That's what many people here in the EU are questioning, particularly because in terms of travel restrictions, plane loads of people, train loads of people are still arriving in places like Milan and leaving. And we also know that when these measures were leaked on Saturday, many people tried to flee south. So has the virus, will these lockdown measures work, or has the opportunity passed?
Holly Hudson, thank you so much for joining us with the battle against the coronavirus gathering pace, not only in Britain, but certainly across entire Europe.